to miss you like crazy, you don't do it by manipulating him, chasing him, or proving your worth like someone auditioning for approval. You do it by anchoring yourself in a level of self-command so rare that your absence becomes a shock to his emotional system. The truth is brutally simple. People miss what they cannot replace. They miss what carried weight. They miss what made them feel grounded rather than entertained. And that begins with you reclaiming the one thing most people give away too cheaply: your attention. Your attention is oxygen. When you give it endlessly, a man breathes comfortably, casually, without gratitude. But when you pull it back with dignity, not anger, you force him to notice the space you once filled. That space becomes a mirror. It reveals what he took for granted. It exposes the contrast between the chaos of the world and the calm you brought into his life. If you want a man to miss you, stop trying to be unforgettable and start becoming uncommon. A woman becomes truly unforgettable not when she tries harder, but when she becomes someone who cannot be moved by insecurity, panic, or emotional impulsiveness. A man misses the woman who knows how to sit with her silence without using it as punishment. He misses the woman whose boundaries are not threats but principles. He misses the woman who does not demand love but inspires it through her consistency. Missing someone is not created by presence alone. It is created by the impact their presence had on your life. To create that impact, you must live in alignment with your own value system, your goals, your routines, your identity. When you become a woman who stands on her own structure rather than melting into his, you force him to recognize you as someone real, someone solid, someone worth the return. And men do not miss what feels needy, desperate, or emotionally chaotic. They miss what feels grounded. They miss the woman who gave them peace, not the woman who tried to perform for validation. They miss the woman who held herself to a higher standard than they expected. They miss the woman who could walk away, not to punish, but because she refused to shrink herself. Your emotional discipline is the force that burns into a man's memory. Every time you choose composure over reaction, distance over drama, boundaries over begging, you teach him something about your value, something he cannot unsee. And when he realizes that your world does not revolve around him, his mind begins to orbit around you. When he notices your silence is not absence of care but presence of strength, he is drawn back toward you with a mix of curiosity, fear, and admiration. Missing someone is an emotional tension, the pull of desire mixed with the discomfort of not having access. You create that tension by removing easy access, not through games, not through punishment, but through self-mastery. Focus on your growth. Build your life with intention. Let your purpose consume the space where overthinking once lived. When a man sees you rising without him, becoming sharper, calmer, more self-possessed, he is confronted with a truth he cannot escape. You were never dependent, you were choosing him, and losing the position of being chosen is what shakes him awake. A woman becomes magnetic when she stops chasing emotional certainty from a man and starts generating certainty within herself. When your identity is not tied to his approval, he begins to fear losing access to your energy. When your presence becomes a gift instead of a guarantee, he begins to seek it. And when you walk away with grace instead of noise, you become the echo he cannot silence. Men miss the woman who is loyal but not blind, loving but not self-abandoning, present but not available on command. They miss the woman whose absence forces them to confront their own inconsistency. They miss the woman who held herself with such quiet dignity that losing her feels like losing a stabilizing force in their life. So if you want a man to miss you like crazy, stop trying to be unforgettable and start becoming undeniable. Focus on your discipline, guard your standards, build your purpose, create a life you're proud of. Because when you elevate yourself, you don't need to teach a man how to miss you. Your transformation will do the teaching for you. Absence only creates desire when your presence had value. And this is the part most people refuse to confront because it demands responsibility, self-awareness, and a brutal honesty about who you were when you were present. Distance doesn't magically make someone miss you. Silence doesn't suddenly create emotional hunger. Walking away doesn't guarantee that someone will feel your loss. What makes absence powerful is the weight your presence carried before you stepped back. When your presence was built on integrity, calmness, self-respect, and emotional clarity, your absence becomes a psychological disruption. It interrupts the comfort he had while you were consistently showing up. It pulls the rug out from under the routine he relied on. But if your presence was filled with anxiety, chasing, over-explaining, over-giving, or trying to hold his attention through fear of losing him, then your absence does not create desire, it creates relief. So before worrying about whether someone will miss you, you must face the deeper question: did your presence elevate the room or did it drain it? Because when you are a person of value, absence becomes thunder. It shakes the emotional ground he stands on. It highlights what he ignored. It exposes the quiet strength he thought he could return to whenever convenient. Presence has value when it is grounded, not desperate. When you show up with emotional stability, not to seek validation, but to offer clarity, you create a standard he feels, sometimes without even understanding it. Value is not loud, it is consistent. It is in how you speak, how you carry yourself, how you respond instead of react. It's in how you honor your own needs before you serve someone else's comfort. And when you live like that, your absence becomes unmistakable, because the world is full of attention but starving for intention. The moment you step back, he realizes that what he lost was not just a person, it was the structure, the peace, the alignment you brought into his life. A man only misses what nourished him, challenged him, or centered him. He misses the woman who added order where there was chaos. He misses the woman who stood firm in a world full of emotional volatility. He misses the woman whose presence made him feel grounded, not entertained. When you understand this, you stop trying to make him miss you, and you start focusing on becoming a woman whose presence carries such weight that withdrawal becomes unforgettable. Absence becomes powerful when it is not weaponized. Weaponized silence is manipulation. Principled distance is respect for yourself and for the emotional reality of the situation. When you walk away, not to punish, but because your standards no longer align with inconsistency, your absence takes on a different energy. It becomes graceful, not bitter. People feel that difference deeply. A man will miss the woman who leaves with dignity, not with drama. He will replay the last conversations with her because they were coherent, not chaotic. He will revisit the memory of her because she represented something he can't easily recreate. Emotional maturity. That kind of presence leaves a mark, one that time can't blur. To create value in your presence, you must build a life that stands with or without him. A woman with purpose becomes gravitational. Her goals, her discipline, her emotional composure, they all create an energy that cannot be replaced. And when she steps away, the absence is not just physical, it is psychological, it is spiritual. It is a void that exposes where he grew comfortable, relying on her emotional labor. That is what he misses. The stability she created, the wisdom she offered, the calm she embodied. Absence only creates desire when your presence had boundaries. Without boundaries, presence becomes noise. A man cannot miss a woman who never allowed herself to be scarce. Constant availability kills curiosity. Predictability kills longing. But a woman grounded in her standards doesn't smother her connection, she balances it. She gives warmth without losing herself. She shows affection without abandoning her identity. And when she steps back, that balance is what he feels missing. He notices the absence of her discipline, her gentle firmness, her refusal to be treated casually. Desire grows in the gap between what he had and what he can no longer access. When your presence was full of self-respect, that gap feels vast. It humbles him. It awakens him. It forces him to reflect not on what you did, but on who you were. And if who you were was rare, strong, yet soft, loving yet principled, present yet independent, then your absence becomes a lesson he cannot ignore. This is how longing is created. not through games, not through scarcity tactics, but through the irreplaceable quality of your presence. Self-respect is the psychological trigger that makes a man feel your loss. And this is the truth most people overlook because they are too focused on love, attention, or connection, and not enough on the internal structure that makes someone unforgettable. A man doesn't feel your loss because you cried for him, waited for him, or sacrificed every part of yourself to accommodate him. He feels your loss when he realizes he can no longer access a woman who refused to betray herself just to keep him comfortable. Self-respect is the force that creates emotional consequence. It is the unspoken law that governs how others treat you, how they value you, and how deeply your absence hits when you finally step back. Without self-respect, your presence becomes noise, familiar, predictable, taken for granted. With self-respect, your presence becomes rare, and your absence becomes unforgettable. This is because self-respect changes the entire psychology of the relationship. It communicates that you are not afraid of losing someone who undermines your peace, disrupts your standards, or pulls you away from who you are becoming. When a man senses this about you, he knows that if you leave, it will not be a threat, it will be a reality. And that reality is what makes him feel your loss on a deeper, more unsettling level. Self-respect shows up in the choices you make, not the speeches you give. A woman who respects herself does not beg for clarity. She demands it through action. She does not chase attention. She maintains consistency in how she carries herself, whether he is giving effort or pulling away. She doesn't drown him in emotional pressure when she feels insecure. She steps back, reassesses, and responds in alignment with her value instead of reacting from fear. This kind of behavior creates psychological contrast. It forces him to compare you to what he's used to, women who compromise themselves to be chosen. When he meets a woman who would rather walk alone than stay in something that diminishes her, he realizes she is not replaceable. That realization doesn't hit him when she is present, it hits him when she's gone. Self-respect is the backbone of female value. It's what gives your boundaries power. Boundaries aren't rules you impose on someone else. They are the structure you build around your emotional well-being. A man feels the loss of a woman with strong boundaries because those boundaries made him feel safe, challenged, and grounded. Her consistency created an invisible frame around the connection. He may not have appreciated it at the time, but once she removes herself, he notices the collapse of stability. He notices the silence where guidance used to be. He notices the gap where emotional accountability once existed. And that gap makes him uncomfortable because it forces him to face his own behavior, his own inconsistencies, and his own immaturity. Without her self-respect anchoring the relationship, he is left with the reflection of who he was when he didn't value her enough. That emotional discomfort is what makes men miss women like her. Self-respect also shapes the way you respond to distance or detachment. When a man pulls away, a woman without self-respect chases, panics, or overcompensates. She tries to win back his attention through effort rather than through identity. But a woman with self-respect steps back as well, not to mirror him, but to protect her emotional equilibrium. She understands that love cannot be sustained through imbalance. She knows that longing cannot be forced, and she refuses to participate in a dynamic where she is the only one investing. This ability to withdraw gracefully communicates a level of strength he cannot ignore. When you don't crumble under emotional pressure, he sees a version of you he didn't realize existed. And when he realizes he took that strength for granted, that's when the loss hits hardest. Self-respect also transforms the energy of your presence. When a woman respects herself, she becomes intentional with her words, her emotions, and her availability. She doesn't over-explain, she communicates clearly. She doesn't tolerate mixed signals. She distances herself from them. She doesn't accept breadcrumbs. She expects full effort. And every time she honors herself, she reinforces a psychological imprint in his mind. She is not like the others. This imprint becomes even more powerful when she leaves. Because he doesn't just lose a person, he loses the standard she represented. He loses the stability she brought. He loses the emotional clarity she offered. Self-respect is what makes your absence feel like losing a structure rather than losing a body. The truth is this: a man only feels the loss of a woman who refused to lose herself for him. He feels the absence of the woman who wouldn't argue for her worth because she lived it. He feels the loss of the woman whose silence carried more dignity than most people's words. He feels the loss of the woman who treated herself with the same respect she expected from others. When she walks away, she doesn't take drama with her, she takes value with her. And that value leaves a void he cannot easily refill. Self-respect is not arrogance or emotional distance. It is alignment. It is the quiet certainty that you deserve reciprocity, effort, and honesty. It is the refusal to engage in relationships that diminish your identity. It is the courage to walk away when staying means losing yourself. And when you carry that kind of energy, your presence becomes impactful and your absence becomes devastating. Because a man might forget a woman who tried to impress him, but he will never forget the woman who honored herself even when he didn't. Emotional discipline, not reaction, is what builds unforgettable impact. Because it is not the noise you make that etches your presence into someone's memory, but the control you demonstrate when emotion tempts you to fall apart. A woman who reacts to every feeling, every inconsistency, every shift in his behavior becomes predictable, and predictability kills influence. But a woman who responds with intention, who pauses instead of exploding, who chooses clarity instead of chaos, she becomes unforgettable. Emotional discipline is not about suppressing your feelings. It is about mastering them so they serve you instead of sabotaging you. When you learn to hold your emotional center, you create a gravity that others feel. A man feels it deeply because it challenges him, grounds him, and exposes his own lack of control. He may not say it out loud, but he respects the woman who doesn't allow her emotions to drag her into desperation, overthinking, or irrational decision-making. That respect becomes the seed of impact. And that impact becomes the memory he cannot escape, especially when you step away. Reaction is easy. Anyone can do it. Reaction is instinct. It is impulse. It is fear disguised as passion. But response is different. Response is deliberate. Response is awareness. Response is strength dressed in silence. When you choose emotional discipline, you immediately separate yourself from the emotional chaos that governs most modern relationships. You are no longer led by insecurity or driven by the need for reassurance. You are led by your standards, your values, and your long-term vision. This kind of woman is rare enough that her presence feels refreshing and her absence feels destabilizing. When you don't react, you remove his power to control the emotional climate. When you respond with composure, you subtly shift the dynamic. You become the anchor instead of the storm, and anchors are always missed when they are gone. Emotional discipline also creates psychological clarity. When you are calm, you hear more, you see more, you understand the intentions behind words and the truth behind actions. Instead of being swept away by his charm or confused by his inconsistency, you can evaluate him with a clear mind. You can distinguish between who he is and who you want him to be. This clarity isn't just for your benefit, it affects him too. A man feels when you are not emotionally dependent on him for stability. He feels when you are steady on your own. It makes him step up or step out, and either outcome is a win for you. But here's the part many people miss. Emotional discipline is what makes your absence powerful because it ensures that he never experienced you as chaotic or overwhelming. He experienced you as balanced, thoughtful, and mature. That is the kind of woman a man remembers long after she's gone. When a woman is governed by reaction, she becomes easy to manipulate. She becomes trapped in emotional cycles that keep her chasing validation or apologizing for things she didn't do. But emotional discipline breaks those cycles permanently. It teaches you that not every situation deserves your response, and not every emotion deserves your expression. Some things deserve silence. Some things deserve distance. Some things deserve nothing at all. This selective engagement is what creates impact because it forces him to face his own behavior without your emotional labor cushioning the consequence. Your calm becomes a mirror, reflecting the truth of the situation back at him. And that reflection often hits harder than any words could. A man remembers the woman who could have reacted but didn't. He remembers the woman who chose dignity when others would have chosen drama. He remembers the woman who spoke with intention instead of emotion, who set boundaries without raising her voice, who walked away without announcing her departure. This kind of emotional restraint isn't weakness, it is power. And that power is felt most intensely when it's no longer around. When you're gone, he will miss the stability your discipline provided. He will miss the emotional order you brought into chaotic moments. He will miss the way your calm forced him to rise instead of sink. He will miss the version of himself that he could only access when he was around you. This is why emotional discipline creates unforgettable impact. You don't just influence how he sees you, you influence how he sees himself. But emotional discipline is not just about managing conflict. It is also about managing closeness. A woman with discipline does not rush intimacy, reveal everything too soon, or give emotional access recklessly. She allows connection to unfold naturally, without forcing it. She regulates her excitement, her affection, her expectations. She doesn't let chemistry override compatibility. She does not build fantasies on top of fragments. This restraint creates emotional depth. It builds anticipation. It keeps the connection grounded instead of inflated. And when you step away, he doesn't just miss your presence, he misses the emotional wisdom you carried. He misses the way you made him feel safe without smothering him, wanted without needing him, connected without losing yourself. That balance is rare, and rarity is unforgettable. Emotional discipline turns you into a woman who is easy to be around but almost impossible to replace. It is the foundation that protects you from manipulation, shields you from emotional chaos, and elevates the quality of every connection you allow. And when you leave a man's life with this level of inner strength, he doesn't just feel your absence, he feels the void of the emotional structure you once provided. A woman who reacts fades quickly from memory, but a woman with discipline stays because she impacted him not through noise, but through mastery. A man misses the woman who walks a path he cannot control, because the moment you choose your own direction over his approval, you shift the entire psychological balance of the connection. Men don't miss the woman who bends, breaks, and reshapes herself to fit their desires. They miss the woman who follows her own compass, not their emotional weather. A man feels the loss of the woman he cannot influence, manipulate, predict, or confine because she represents something he does not own. Freedom. And freedom is magnetic. The woman who chooses her path with certainty, who refuses to be steered by pressure or fear, becomes a force he remembers long after she is gone. When you live with intention instead of seeking permission, you create an energy no man can easily replicate. Your independence becomes the tension that pulls him toward you. Your ambition becomes the mystery he cannot unravel. Your self-direction becomes the reminder that loving you was never the same as possessing you. That is the kind of woman he misses, the one whose path he could walk beside but never command. A woman like this cannot be controlled because she does not anchor her sense of worth in how much he invests. She does not give him the power to validate or invalidate her journey. She does not measure her steps according to his comfort. She chooses her own pace, her own boundaries, her own elevation. And when you live like that, you become the emotional contrast that wakes him up. He sees the difference between you and the women who sacrifice themselves in the hope of being chosen. He sees the way you rise without asking for permission. He sees the way you refuse to shrink just to fit into his expectations. And even if he doesn't say it, he feels the gap between his desire to keep you close and his inability to control the direction you're heading. That gap becomes longing. That longing becomes memory. That memory becomes the ache he feels when your absence hits. A man misses a woman he cannot control because she is rooted in her own purpose. She is not swayed by his inconsistency because she has responsibilities beyond pleasing him. She doesn't crumble when he pulls away because her identity isn't tied to his attention. She doesn't wait for him to choose her before she chooses herself. This kind of woman becomes unforgettable because she refuses to let love derail her growth. She is loving, but not dependent. She is giving, but not sacrificing. She is present, but not available at the cost of her own development. When she walks away, she does not do it out of spite, she does it out of alignment. And a man feels that kind of departure more deeply than any emotional outburst. The woman he misses is the one who knows who she is. A man cannot control a woman who has done the inner work, who has confronted her insecurities, healed her patterns, and built her self-worth from within, instead of borrowing it through male validation. She is not intimidated by his silence because she has learned to sit in her own. She is not shaken by his distance because she has built a life that functions without his constant presence. She is not moved by emotional manipulation because she recognizes it instantly. And when a man realizes he cannot control a woman like this, something powerful happens. He begins to value what he cannot dominate. He begins to respect what he cannot influence. He begins to fear losing what he cannot replace. Control is rooted in predictability. A man can only control what he can predict and manipulate. But a woman on her own path is unpredictable, not in a chaotic way, but in a liberated way. She is not impulsive. She is intentional. She is not reckless. She is sovereign. She is not scattered. She is focused on her own evolution. This unpredictability is what creates fascination. And fascination is what creates missing. Because he can't anticipate her next move. He can't rely on her to fall into the same emotional loops. He can't expect her to be available whenever he feels lonely. She is not an emotional safety net. She is a whole world he had the privilege of experiencing, but never the guarantee of owning. A man misses the woman who walks her own path because she never collapses into his. She can love him without losing herself. She can care without clinging. She can connect without surrendering her destiny. And when you live like that, you create emotional gravity. Even if he walks away, he circles back mentally. Even if he chooses someone else, he compares them to you. Even if he pretends he's fine, the absence of your independence, your strength, your direction creates a mental void he cannot fill. The truth is this: a man never truly loses the woman he could control because she never fully existed outside of him. But he always feels the loss of the woman who had her own path, her own voice, her own vision. The woman he could not tame, the woman he could not distract from her purpose, the woman he could walk with but never lead blindly. That is the woman who becomes the echo in his mind, the lesson in his heart, the presence he remembers in her absence. And that is the woman whose departure hurts the most because she was whole without him and he didn't realize her worth until she was gone.